true, plenty of that goes around the internet. That's still free speech too. You have the right to say things that are not, as long as you're not slandering somebody, you have the right to make claims about the world that don't happen to be true. So the idea that doesn't qualify as free speech is, of course, absurd. But then that also requires some central authority to be the arbiter of what is true and what is not.
Exactly. And it's like a childish view of truth and lies. It's childish because one of the only ways that people find out if something is correct or not is let someone say something that's incorrect, and then someone who knows a lot more comes along and corrects them.
Right.
Yeah, that's how it works. You know, like I had Terrence Howard. You know Terrence Howard, the actor?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Brilliant guy, but wrong about a lot of the things that he thinks he's right about. I brought him in with Eric Weinstein. And Eric Weinstein, who's a genius, like a legitimate genius and a mathematician, explained him like very patiently and carefully, this is why you're wrong, and this is what you need to know, and you've got some good ideas, but you're off on all these different things. I'm an actual expert. And let me help you out here. And so anybody who saw Terrence Howard talk on the first podcast had this idea. Like, oh, wow, maybe he's right about all these things. Anybody who saw the second podcast with Eric, where Eric clearly corrects him and actually knows what he's talking about. He's a brilliant guy. Now you have that's what free speech is supposed to be about. That's what it's supposed to be about. An actual expert comes in, corrects everything. And then you have this look at it like, oh, okay, now I see. Now it's been, but it's not silence Terrence Howard because he doesn't know what the fuck he's saying. No, it's like, let him talk. Now let someone who really knows what they're talking about explain to him why he's wrong. That's the benefit of free speech. And everybody who listens to that has a better understanding of all these different really weird, complex things that they're discussing that maybe otherwise you would never have illuminated in that way.
Yeah.
You'd never really be able to understand it.
That's why I think the free speech thing is, people act like it's a complicated subject. Where do you draw the line? What is free speech? What qualifies and what doesn't? I don't think it is that complicated, really. I think it's just you should have the right to express whatever your opinion happens to be. Everyone should be able to say their opinion, their point of view. Wrong or right, reprehensible or not, they should be able to say it. Yeah, you can't defame someone, you can't threaten to kill somebody, but those aren't really opinions. That's different. It's like, if it's just your opinion about what's happening in the world, it should be allowed, and it should be allowed legally. It should be allowed on every social media platform. I think it's kind of simple, actually, to differentiate between that and because there's certain kinds of speech that should not be allowed. We all understand that.
Yeah, it's complicated, and this childish idea that just handed over to the government to clean it up, that's not the answer. It is complicated. There are going to be people that say a bunch of things that aren't true. But the way to combat that is not put the government in charge of what's true. Right. Especially when they've been wrong so many times. Or they just out and out lied so many times. That's a crazy position for the left to take. The ones who are supposed to be the party of science and reason, and the ones who are supposed to be the most educated. It's just a bizarre perspective just because you don't want Trump to win. You don't want this to happen again.
And hate speech too is the other the other label they use to. You can't say. Tim Walz said this recently.
Yeah.
About free speech. He said, "Well, of course you can't. Hate speech and misinformation doesn't count." Well, what is hate speech? Hate speech is just you're expressing that you hate something. Well, that's people hate things. It's legitimate. There are some things we should hate. So the idea that it's automatically illegitimate to express a view if it's communicating hatred is, of course, ridiculous.
It is ridiculous, but it's also a really goofy label that you can slap on basically anything.
Right. Like
hate speech can get to the point where if you call Caitlyn Jenner Bruce Jenner, that's hate speech, right? That's dead naming. Dead naming falls under hate speech. And so what are you saying? You can't do that? Well, that's fucking ridiculous. I can call him a cunt, but I can't say his name is Bruce. That's insanity. Like, what world are we living in where you can decide what someone can and can't say by a label that's so wide? It's such a net you're casting. Hate speech, it's like completely subjective. Anyone can decide what's hate speech.
Right. It implies that all hatred is automatically bad, or at least it puts the people in power in position where they can decide what kind of things you're allowed to hate and what you're not.
Right, and it makes things all equal, too. Something like very benign versus something truly awful. It's all under this one stupid umbrella of hate speech.
Yeah. Hate crimes, too, are the same.
Where do you think we would be if Elon hadn't bought Twitter? Different world, right?
Yeah. That's I think Elon Musk is he is actually preserving free speech. One of the main people preserving free speech in America right now, and going into space. So it's always funny to me when the left tries to nitpick and needle at him. It's like, this is one of the most significant human beings on the planet right now,
and literally one of the most significant human beings historically ever.
Right.
He's like a Nikola Tesla type character that people are going to be talking about 100 years from now.
And SpaceX will launch a rocket and it'll blow up or something.
Stephen King was making fun of him.
Right. Yeah. You'll have someone like Stephen King, like, rocket blew up. It's like, dude, yeah, your rockets don't blow up because you don't build them. I mean,
Not only that, like, he made this tweet about how it had damaged the ionosphere that when it blew up. But do you know that like heals up in like 40 minutes?
yeah.
Like, he didn't even bother looking into that. Like, every time they punch a rocket through that shit, it damages it. But it